magical creatures. I hope you're ready for the next speaker. She's going to speak about cultural heritage and role-playing. She's going to introduce her game, Forgotten Gods. And Amy van der Zee, welcome Amy van der Zee for the, at the stage of the Whispering Woods. Yes, tell us everything, Amy.
Thank you. So, Forgotten Gods, it's a game that we started 2 years ago, and essentially a little bit of the origins of this game is that I wanted to combine tourism and game design elements together. And together with the Nausicaa Foundation, we figured we're just going to try to combine the two in essentially one game. Throughout the years, it has changed a lot. It went from a LARP-ish city game to a city-ish city game, like with LARP elements, essentially. It's a little bit of both worlds, I would describe it as, because it's not exactly a city game as you envision it. It's also not a full-on LARP. It's really what you're going to make of it yourself. So it's very much up to the players who are playing the game, how far they want it to take. So the aims of Forgotten Gods is essentially having people discover a city on their own. In cultural heritage, you can see that usually things are mapped out for people. You have an itinerary, you have a little historic story, and you're kind of just essentially guided through it. And what we wanted to see with this game is if we can take that to a different level of having people explore a city themselves and explore, not just the sightseeing parts, just to really discover what the soul of the city is, what exactly there is there, and come across places they never would have otherwise. So, more about the narrative of this game. We have, yes it does it, 5 pantheons in total. We decided to focus on different pantheons when it came to the gods, to keep it streamlined. So we have war, love, wisdom, nature, and death, essentially, which come back and through which the gods that people are going to play as have things in common. Then we have now 6 guilds, started as 5, now we have 6. Which are the Celtic, Slavic, Sumerian, Greek, Egyptian, and I always forget the last one. There you go. Which I said in random order. It's up to you to figure out which symbol is now for which one. You'll figure it out eventually, because I will be showing you. So everyone is a god from a pantheon and has its own guild. And the narrative goes that every god, 1,000 years ago, has essentially spoken an oath to not use their powers for 1,000 years. A social experiment of sorts. See if humanity can actually survive on their own without the intervention of their divine powers. And would you use it within those 1,000 years? There's consequences. You lose them. So 1,000 years ago, all the gods have met in a sacred city. This sacred city is the city we play in. So in this case, would we play in Budapest? The sacred city is Budapest. Now 1,000 years later, one way or another, each god has broken the oath. They've lost their divine powers. And they've come back once more to see how humanity is doing. To see how it's going. And they are going through the city to see truly what humans have done. Like Is there any sign of their worship left? Do people still remember them? Are they treating the earth as they should? Are they honoring what the earth is giving them? Or are they screwing up things little by little and destroying the planet as a result? And therefore will need help again of God's. So, on this last walk, 1,000 years later, the gods are going to decide, should we prolong this oath and see for another 1,000 years whether if humans are capable enough of living on their own without intervention of our divine powers? Or are we taking back our powers and are we taking back our influence to show them how it's actually done? So, essentially, this is the layout of the game. You come in, you walk in with your guilds, and you gather. You talk about what has happened, how things have done. And then on the walk, you gather essentially with your family, with your pantheon. You walk throughout the city with a few quests in mind, looking for where you're worshipped, looking for what the city truly is, what the soul carries. Different things that you can search for and look for. And at the end of the day, you will gather what you found and send it to the keepers. The keepers is the element I haven't yet explained. The keepers are essentially the keepers of the oath. They're not there to judge, they're just there to be and to essentially write down what's happening. Administration of some sort. And you, as gods, will show them. This is the conclusion we've come to. This is what we've seen. And then once you've gathered back from your walk, you're going to make your decision. Again, with your guilds. So you might walk through the city in pantheons, but in the end of the decision that's been made is essentially done in the guilds. So, Guild of War, Guild of Love, reconvene and tell them, what have you seen? And so, you make your decision, you vote, and as your end conclusion is reached, whether your divine powers are going to be restored once more or you're going to essentially further prolong the oath, is the end conclusion of the game. You make the decision together, and then it's the end. It's a game in which essentially you get to LARP, you get to roleplay, but also you get to see a lot of a place. And that is essentially what we try to reach with this. But also to just have a nice experience, even if you've lived in like this city your whole life, to make you see little things through a different perspective. Because no one around you throughout the walk will know that you're gods. You don't want humans to know that you're gods. Because you are the one judging them. And you want an honest reply from them. So you're essentially playing gods that are undercover and are now coming to the conclusion whether they're going to reach, essentially make the decision for are we going to prolong this? Are we not? Do I want my power back? And why? So, looking at the gods, I will give you a few snippets of what you can see, because we've worked on this for a while. And Patty will give out the actual longer character sheets. But behind me you can also see some snippets. So essentially, each god has a backstory. Each god has lost their powers at some random moment in time. But they have been active one way or another, whether they had their divine powers or not. They've been doing things. So maybe, like Thor, you lost your powers quite early. And you essentially used them to win a war and create a giant thunderstorm to destroy a whole fleet of ships. Maybe you're like, oh god, I'm gonna mispronounce this, Lung, who loves his little technicalities, who has been active under different cover names, like Leonardo da Vinci, putting all kinds of ideas in the world, and at some point losing their powers through essentially getting addicted to an internet game. Some gods have found that losing their powers is a little bit silly. Sometimes they lose their powers because they want to do something good. Sometimes they lose their powers because they intend to do bad to humans, but it backfires, which is unfortunate. And sometimes gods just want to play around, like Aphrodite, who made actual working love potions. So the art that you can see is actually made specifically for this game, with 3 wonderful illustrators. And you've seen all the 3 styles, they'll be in the end credits. And yeah, it's essentially something to look for. Some kind of identity that you have, and also something that you can clash with other gods with. Sometimes a god has done something that's unbeknownst to them, has hindered the plans of a different god. Maybe you find out, maybe you don't. So within the character sheet, there is also a lot of things that you can tackle. A lot of things to play with. And essentially making it a little bit free of how much you're going to do with it. So yeah. So here we have the god of death. Also, we got a little bit creative throughout the whole process. We went from a little bit more generic character sheets to more personal ones. It has changed drastically over time, and we've had a bit of fun with them. All the authors have their own interests of this, so you can really see sometimes which one is written by which is interesting because it gives different flavors of descriptions, and you can really go for something that you connect with. So, as for the runs that we've done different games by now throughout the years. We've been doing this for 2.5 years by now. And we have started in Krakow with the 2 initial runs, which was still very different from what it has become over time, but the fundamentals are there. We've done a few runs, I think 2 runs in Berlin, and then we have done 1 in Prague and 1 in Ljubljana, which is our most recent one, which I'm going to show some pictures of, because that is the run that is most true to what it is currently. So this was our lovely venue. And you can see the setup with the oath, I really wish the colors would come through more, but you get the idea of having the character sheets lay out and essentially having people be able to look, what character do I want to play, what I'm searching for. And then in the pre-workshops, getting to know who is your god, what are your relationships in your guilds, but also what are your relationships in your pantheon. Who do you like, who do you not like? Are there things you feel very passionate about that like your opinion can absolutely not be changed about? So we set them out. This was our lovely little group. And we had a turn up about 25 to 28 people, 25 officially. And this game is designed for 30 people, so that's plenty. And they went out into the city. They explored. So you have different pictures that they would send on Discord within the channels and show them what they were up to, and also show each other what are we up to. They were running around doing things like building a shrine to like see like, listen, this is something for us. This is how we are seen in modern society. But also meet local people. See who are living in a city and connecting through them. Because very often when you are visiting someplace, you don't really get to speak a lot to people. At least if you're guided, it's tough, you don't know the language, it might be a little bit intimidating, and it is a nice way to give them a bit of a push of like, hey, I am totally not someone undercover here and trying to judge humanity, but like I think that you have a very cool outfit right now. Can we take a picture, please? And since you're gods, perform a little ritual. And show that, like essentially connect with your group, but also finding a nice little spot. Maybe somewhere a little bit more quiet, a little bit more out of the way. Somewhere you wouldn't go to normally. Finding little things you can find on the ground, like sticks, and light them. So, they are done with the walk. You decide the fate of humanity. And you get together once more. It can go two ways. You may decide to keep the power. You may decide to let it go on for another 1,000 years. Who knows? Maybe you'll come back again. Maybe you don't. So, like I said, run in Krakow, Berlin, and Ljubljana, and Prague. And if you were at Portal News, you already know what the answer to this question is. But if you don't, we're going back to Krakow once more. And after that, we are going to the Netherlands for the first time. So, here is what the designers are who have worked on this. A lot of them are in this room right now. And this is what it's all about. So, essentially, this is where my speech part ends. And if you have any questions, you can raise your hand and ask. Yes?
How did you decide on which god to pick for this battle?
So, we essentially did like a bit of research to like look who are maybe like a little bit more known in certain areas. Like, for example, Thor is known everywhere. And in like the mythologies that were a little bit less known, we try to essentially really look at like what are they standing for and try to make a good fit, but also keeping the other the other guilds in mind. So if there is like, since for example war and death can be quite close to one another, if there is like a death god that also does a lot with war, sometimes, and there is then another war god as well, or another death god, we would kind of like look in between of like, okay, what is the best fit, what works best, and like that we would decide upon it, essentially.
From each pantheon, we wanted a god representing each of the guilds. Like, so we need a god of death, a god of love, and see if those five together make a nice story and somehow are different from each other. So it was designed from a player
Yes.
And apparently, there is in each mythology that we took, there was God for all of the guilds, with one exception. We could not find a Slavic god of wisdom. Perhaps because the Slavs were, the pagans were killed before they learned the writing system. So we picked up Veles, who is like originally a god of death, but is also about some mystical participation, initiations, and mysteries. So it's the closest to wisdom as you can get with Slavics.
And just adding that to the team, we have anthropologies, religion and culture studies. So we're basing this on sources and not on Marvel.
Bear also somewhere in that area.
The god of war.
Bear war.
Yeah, we put him in the war.
Okay. I mean, I know they can.
They were everywhere, but we needed to put somebody, you know.
Yeah.
Nagun, as understood as the deity of the sky, could be also considered the deity of wisdom.
Yeah.
So there is, you know, a lot of designers' choices.
Yes. Okay, I think you were first.
So I just have a quick question, if I may. Could you give us a specific example for a previous run about what the final decision was and what were the major considerations behind that? Like why was that eventually chosen?
So you mean the end conclusion, right? I think the best is to go by Ljubljana, because it's the most recent one, in which the gods decided we want our powers back. So a lot of groups came to the conclusion of like, it's overcrowded, they're not sustainable, where's the nature? So essentially, the guilds themselves were like, okay, but we can do better. So there was some tension, but there was also some mischief of the war gods, essentially going by the other guilds to be like, you should totally vote for getting our power back because these points. And they succeeded very well on that. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, sure.
Great.
Actually, maybe two questions.
Okay.
One of them is faster. Was there a run where we decided not to want the power back?
There was.
The first one in Krakow, when the structure was a little bit different, but this was discussed, and they came to the point that, okay, I would like my powers back, but if I get them, the Odin gets them, and Odin is creating wars to get more corpses to enrich his Valhalla, right? And there are the gods of death, and all of the others get the powers back, and that may be actually the end of our life.
So they sacrificed themselves for the good of humanity.
The actual question I wanted to ask was a little bit different approach. Were there any interesting, how to say that, takeouts you had, like lessons you learned running this LARP? Is there any interesting story you have about that? Like what is that? Okay, I think we should learn something about running this LARP, running the LARP, just all in all. Do you have a story like that from running these LARPs?
I mean, we have different like little bits here and there when it comes to it. I think overall people really enjoy the mischief, so there is usually a lot of that going on.
I would go with the story that the ransom belly, that we had some people who were really into the roles and the habits, for example. That's why I'm having this. That they were keeping contact through Discord. And through the different threads, we have the different guilds and pantheons, they were on Discord, and they were exchanging topics, and they were insulting each other beautifully. And also, when they were sending pictures from a different quest, they were abusing each other's statues, like, look at the Greeks ones, like they are, where the Nordics came, and so on, because it's easier, for example, to spot the Greek culture. There was a shop Saturn, and then the Greeks, they can say, you see, we are still cherished, and you Slavic or Celtic, are you or not? And that was what I was really enjoying when they were interacting between each other on Discord and in reality. No, that's it.
Okay. I got the sign from the guy.
In Berlin, we introduced also a point system to motivate them to send us more pictures, more memes, more everything that gives, like, lowers the immersion, highens the number of materials that you get. But then the conclusion was that we are stepping over mythologies, over dead religions. You cannot cross a street without walking on dead and ancient religions, that the signs are everywhere, that the symbols surround you. And it was actually, you can make it reversed. Can you find a place that has no connection with Nordic, Celtic, Slavic stories or the deities, or the source of storytelling of all times?
Yeah. Yes, in the back.
Who are your participants, or what is your audience? Is it more experienced LARPer
It's a bit of
community, or more for not that LARPer people? Because you mentioned that it's a Citygame / LARP.
Yeah, so essentially, this has gone through a lot of different phases of wanting to have, a more beginnerish style LARP and then having a more advanced option to, have add-ons. So essentially, this is a very beginner-friendly game because you can take it as far as you want to and you have everything on the character sheet that you need. But we are actually planning to also look into making, an expansion pack of some sort. So if there is really a group of LARPers who wants to get really deeply into it, we can give them a more LARPish experience, essentially. Usually the people who come to this is a bit of a mix. Some people have very little experience or have only played D&D, and other people have been to multiple LARPs before. So you never truly know exactly who's going to come, but it's usually people in their 20s who just want something fun to do with their afternoon, essentially. What I've noticed. It depends. We always have a bunch who are from the city themselves, and usually it's also people who are from outside the city who live elsewhere. We've also done a run with people who were volunteering and who were foreigners mostly. So it's also, again, usually a little bit of a mix, but nowadays it's most common that people are at least living in the country, but they don't always live in the city. Yes, all the way in the back.
I understood that you had the intention to show people places in the Citygame that others haven't seen, and of course make a good game, but when you decided on the specific topic, was there a certain story you wanted to tell or something you wanted the people to feel? Because I feel like there's so many narratives about these shrinking gods or gods regaining their power, and also pop cultural references like American gods. So did you just think it's a nice setting to show people their city in a different way, or was there also a different story involved?
I think it has also a lot to do with the personal interests of the original authors. Because like I said, we have an anthropologist, we have, philosophists on the team was the base team that we started with. And we were brainstorming different types of storyline essentially when we all started this. And we very quickly realized we want to do something that has some kind of element of magic or divinity, just because it's also something that we personally enjoy. And we had the references of the book as well. And essentially it kind of came quite naturally, very fast, that all of us were very excited to go with this storyline, especially because it fits quite well also the idea of tourism, because in a lot of cities, especially in Europe, because it's mostly aimed for cities in Europe, there are a lot of influences by ancient mythologies that you can see essentially everywhere. So it fitted very well, and it was something that we were excited about.
Now I wonder, is it that the tourists are basically like gods in another city? Does not a tourist behave like a god from some foreign land? I will eat this piece. Oh, local food is boring. Oh, let's see the museum. Okay, 5 days is enough for the city. Give me another. Is it not this kind of attitude?
I mean, some of them definitely do. Like, as someone who has studied tourism for 6 years, depending on which direction you're going into, people can very much behave like kings and like they own the place and should be owed to go to certain places and like be able to go there. Like, you know, breaking the rules to like take that one picture. You know, if one does it, everyone does it. So it's definitely something that exists, unfortunately, because it actually destroys a lot of cultural heritage. Because people climb on stuff they're not supposed to climb on to make that like nice aesthetic little picture. Yeah. So yeah.
First versions had some site-specific elements, so it took more time to actually adjust it to a city. But after some improvements and a design seminar, we made it like city-proof.
Yeah.
It's 10 minutes to adjust it and print it for another city, and the idea is actually to play it in different European cities. I want to play it next year at Portal, and I can come to Knutpunkt, I can come to any like other events in a city that I don't know about, and we are prepared to run a game. We just needed 5 hours in a group of people who will come, start their game at a place, later go to a city, so it should be in the city center, and then we'll go back to finish the story with us. So I do not need to know the city precisely to run the game. I just need to know that I have location in the same.
Yeah, so essentially what we tried is like, in the beginning it was a little bit more detailed, but we tried to make it a bit more facilitator friendly as well. And now that's fully published, it's actually also available for like, if you want us to run it, like we can do that for you because we're experienced with it. But also all the materials are like online and you can find them. Actually, I will go to the last slide that has it conveniently on there, because we do have a whole document with all the character sheets and the whole layout, which you want to run in.
But what you are holding is a festival version, so this is not a version of a LARP-ish city game. This is some additional, especially you can continue.
Yes, so each of you has received a character card, a random card with one deity. Another 50 cards are distributed around the corridor now. I just made it now so people don't get it too fast. And on the second side, there is a little quest, a personal quest, which is to find signs of your worship. Because even if the people on the streets don't remember your name, they use your symbols, they retell your stories to sell pizza in a restaurant, for example. Your stories are, the motives you were in of your stories are all around the city. You need to find any kind of proof that you are still worshipped here in Budapest. If you find it, record, digitalize it in a form of photo, video, like a 10-second podcast, upload it to any social media with a Forgotten Gods LARP hashtag, and show it to one of the organizers. It can be me, Emmy, or Patty, and in Ronia's card there is a reward in a form of a candy waiting for you.
Okay, some more questions. I don't know if there's for Spishak.
Until the portal is over. So after the closing ceremony, until the closing ceremony on Sunday.
Is this something you implemented, or it can be anything that I would interpret it as a sign?
Be inventive, be creative, anything that you interpret as a sign of worship. We do not have any more suggestions.
So just go out there, figure something out. We have an amazing city that the Portal conference is given in, with like a ton of architecture. I'm sure you figure it out. So I think we can wrap it up if all the questions have been answered. We're nice on time. So I want to thank you for coming. And hopefully see you sometime.